Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's May 8th, and this is another installment of SIG CLI. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. Before we jump to the main topics, there are two of them. I've pasted the link to the agenda in the chat, so have a look at it. For some reason, Zoom is not working nicely for me today when I'm trying to share my screen. They'll probably won't do that. Anyhow, announcements. The next meeting in 2 weeks will be canceled due to KubeCon EU, but we are having face-to-face during KubeCon itself. So if you have the time, I'm gonna paste the link to the schedule where we have the SIG face-to-face. If I remember correctly, we have an hour and a half or 2 hours planned for ourselves. So we want to have some PRs merged, some caps reviewed. That would be the perfect place, the perfect venue to discuss those. Or eventually, if you have some ideas they want to bring up, that is the right time and the right place to get them merged as applies to PRs. I'll be there for the entire time. If I'm not seeing anyone, I'll just probably go through the backlog of the PRs that I own people reviewing. If not, I'm more than happy to talk with anyone else about the direction we're going with the SIG CLI and the kubectl project. Also, with regards to KubeCon EU, a reminder, we will be hosting 2 sessions for SIG CLI. One will be intro and the other one will be deep dive. Both Phil and I will be present at both of them. And from what we've been discussing, we'll be showcasing Kustomize, and we will also do a quick code tour for kubectl. So that's it. And then a quick update from the test grid. Sean was looking at the tests for the past 2 weeks. How good or bad are we looking, Sean?
So we're looking okay. So there were continual GKE Google-specific problems, mostly bringing up and taking down clusters. I don't think it's a systemic problem, although it's slightly slightly worrying that our Google clusters are being flaky.
Okay.
I'll continue to dig into it to see what's going on. We've seen other flakiness here at Google, and so I don't think it's that surprising.
Okay. Thanks very much, Sean, for the work on that one. So I'm guessing I can send your name for the next 2 weeks when it comes to looking at the test in that case.
Sure.
Cool. Thanks very much. With that, we can jump to the main topics. Actually, we have 3 of them right now. Kustomize 2.1, new features, and I'm going to pass the baton over to Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, let me try to share my screen. I pasted a link to the slides into the chat. Is that working?
Yep, we see your screen.
Okay, so I got about 10 slides here. This is what we're going to hopefully release this month with Kustomize 2.1. And first I want to do a quick review. A couple of slides to remind people what it is. It's a way to declare your changes or declare the settings you have for your cluster and use share patches and share changes that you'd like to make between different environments. So say you've got multiple environments, staging, production, and development. You can share a declaration of all the resources you want to use on those environments and then just patch things. So it's template free, and let me give you another example. Here's how it works. you declare what you'd like to do in a customization file. This file points to other YAML files that contain the things you want to put in your cluster, your deployments, your config maps, and whatnot. And the customization file has descriptions of the things you'd like to change. So in this simple example, you're adding a name prefix to the resources that you're deploying to your cluster. So the project has been going for a while. I'm going to do a little review on that in a second, but here's some numbers. We're up to about 1,200 commits. We've got a lot of test coverage. And we got about 110 outstanding issues. They're growing dramatically, and help is wanted. Thank you to Sunny0826, who started our simplified Chinese documentation. Here's some history. Going back to August of 2018, that's when Brian Grant authored his declarative application management for Kubernetes document. That was an inspiration to start working on a program that we first started developing in the kubectl repo. It was called KExpand. And that went through a couple different name changes. Almost a year ago now, it changed to from conflate to customize, and we settled on the notion of a customization file. And in May, which is about a year ago, I think it was May 7th, we released version 1 from our new home, our new repo in Kubernetes SIG, sponsored by the SIG CLI. And we had all the basic elements in there. We had bases and overlays and all your basic transformations. We continued adding features over the course of the next year. Those are listed here with some links to some descriptions of how they work. Back in February, we started to work on, or January and February, we started to work, actually December, on moving things so that they could be incorporated into kubectl. This required lots of refactoring, lots of isolation of Kubernetes dependencies, and some security changes because of the fact that we'd be customized as able to download things from the web, and that's new behavior for kubectl. When you're applying to kubectl, you can actually be downloading something. And version 2 was released in March, and that was along with a new release of kubectl. It's now incorporated in kubectl. So in 2.1, I just got 4 slides here talking about the major features. Oh, sorry about that. Apologies. The first thing is we're going to remove some of the security restrictions, or at least allow somebody to get around them in 2.1. This is a hugely popular or unpopular feature of the security features that we have. And it's kind of self-explanatory. Customization files are unable to reach out of their directory to find resources by default. And by adding this flag, you can get outside, you can share patches between different customizations. Second thing that's kind of new is we've switched everything to Go modules. Again, this is something that's going to help with integration into kubectl and other binaries. And this is also going to be the last release where we have kind of a grab bag, everything but the kitchen sink in an unsupported PKG directory. We don't formally release the packages. We only formally release the command line utility. So after this release, we're going to start thinking about more carefully about what the packages should be and how they should be released. Third thing that's new is the ability to extend Kustomize via plugins. And plugins, Kustomize does 2 things, really. It just transforms resources and it generates resources. Historically, it's been able to generate config maps and secrets and transform anything, change names of things, patch things, and so forth. So we're adding extension points to allow you to write your own transformers and your own generators. And what that looks like is in your customization file, you'll have 2 new keywords, the possibility of using 2 new keywords. One is generators, the other is transformers. And each of these takes a list of YAML files as its argument. Each YAML file describes either a generator or a transformer. And here's an example of a secret maker, a secret generator that looks a lot like how Kustomize behaves currently, but now all the parameters are isolated in this one file that's fed into the into a generator. So there's documentation for this. There's a tutorial that shows you how to do last mile customization of a Helm chart. Lots of examples, and also in two forms. There's built-in plugins that you can look at, and there's also lots of tests that kind of give you an end-to-end description of how to use plugins. Third thing, and I think Jingfang's going to talk about this some more, is the notion of an inventory, which is going to enable safe pruning. So in your customization file, you can specify keyword inventory, and that's going to just point to an object like a config map or any object, any Kubernetes object, because what it does is this inventory is it stores when you do if you add this keyword, it'll create this new object which has a list of all the things that were involved in the customized build process. And that's it. It just creates a new object that becomes part of the output, and it has a list of all the things that were built. Now that inventory can be consumed by other clients. And the idea is that what you apply on a Thursday, say, can be informed by an inventory that you saved last Monday. So you can do things like smart garbage collection, smart pruning, and so forth. Kustomize can't do this by itself. Something else has to be able to consume the inventory, and that's, I think, what Jingfang might be talking about. Anyway, there's documentation. Check it out. And that's it. We fixed a lot of bugs. I'll give you a final count in the release notes, which will be coming soon. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for a detailed update on the Kustomize state. Are there any questions to Jeff or other people that are working on the Kustomize? Okay, hearing none. In that case, we can jump over to Jingfang. As Jeff mentioned, she will touch base on the pruning topic. Most importantly, she has a request for a new repo CLI utils. Take it away, Jingfang.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Jingfang, and I'm working on Kustomize. And recently, I started to do some experimental development in the repo CLI experimental for new apply command, for new prune command, and also we want to support the apply. When you apply some directories, you apply a bunch of resources. Excuse me. We want to apply to wait or block for the status, for the aggregated status of different objects. So those things are all involved in CLI experimental. So today I want to mention that I'd like to request a new repo with the name CLI utils. So there are mainly two reasons for this request. One is for the work we have done in CLI experimental. So we developed some libraries, and we will develop more in that repo. But for consumers, for the users who are going to use that, so the name with experimental will easily raise concerns about the maturity of what's inside. So that's why we want the repo with a different name, or we create a new repo. Another reason of requesting this is by this new repo, we can provide more modular utilities. For example, we can provide apply command or apply library independently from other kubectl commands. Currently, if you want to render kubectl apply library, you have to render the whole of it, right? So if we can move maybe apply in the future, we can move apply library into this new utility repo, and then user can just use the utility repo. They don't need to render the whole of kubectl.
Yeah, like I'll add to that. I think like one of the things that we may have discussed is like the challenges around supporting version skew with coup control and what we tell our users, and because of the many different commands in coup control, like saying we support +or-1 means we support +or-1 for every command in coup control, which means if you're just using apply from a delivery container or something, that the version skew semantics on that apply command are +or-1 version, right? Where what we could provide is just test the apply code, for instance, and say, well, actually, the apply code is good for -8 versions or something like that, right? And you can always run the latest head version of the apply container, and then now we actually provide stronger guarantees around the version skew of that particular utility because it's published independently and tested with those semantics.
So I obviously have one question at hand, aside from the naming utils, but let's leave that one off the table for now. We have the CLI runtime, which was meant exactly for that, as a bag of utilities and helpers for both CLI implementers, plugin implementers, and whatnot, to be able to not to have to vendor entire kubectl in the near future, but rather be able to reuse the same primitives that we are using already in kubectl and build either plugins or their own full-blown commands if they wish to. So that's my question. Why, rather having yet another repo, we would not focus on expanding the CLI runtime functionalities with the apply, since I'm pretty sure that, yeah, as you said, the apply is worthy of living inside of the repo.
I guess the question there is, do we want to publish binaries from that repo? So I think, Jingfeng, what you were thinking, right, is you'd actually have
we want to publish library,
a binary apply,
and also container that user can directly use from the repo.
So potentially, like one way of structuring things, right, is the library goes in CLI runtime, and then the utils repo is just a place to publish from, where we wrap the library with a Cobra command that parses flags into fields of the runtime library arguments.
Yeah, that would be reasonable. Having the CLI utils being more of a set of actual tooling that you can use either as plugins or standalone commands, and having the CLI runtime still be the library that we allow other people to vendor. I think that distinction between the two would be reasonable.
That makes sense. Yeah. So like CLI utils wouldn't have a package directory.
So it only contains binaries.
And so it would just wrap, and that means that like development workflow, it would be a little bit slower, which is fine, right? Because you update CLI runtime, then update the vendor of utils. But it actually, I think, meets another goal, which is it guarantees that we're following the same workflow we're telling our users to use. And so if it doesn't work well,
and
we'll experience that pain and fix it.
Yeah, and at the same time, we are actually footing ourselves, meaning we are the primary consumer of the CLI runtime, which ensures, gives higher confidence for consumers so that we don't break them in the first place, and that we test it properly before publishing. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And
we won't be able to break version skew, or we won't be able to break our APIs without shooting ourselves in the foot, because we'll know.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfectly makes sense, and yeah, it is. Okay,
Well,
awesome.
well, CLI utils then hold plugins or some of the data-driven commands. If it's holding plugins, would you provide some sort of version matchup where you could load the plugin version and see if the version skew, assuming it loads, I guess.
Do we mean plugins for KubeControl or plugins for Customize?
Customize. Yeah.
Good question. Let's see. So the plugins themselves could be commands, right? So, and it depends on, I think, the plugin, right? Like you could have a plugin, I could envision having a plugin where the contents of that plugin live in CLI runtime because it is within the scope of that repo, and then vendored in and then just published as a command. I think the big question there is like what sorts of plugins would be in scope for SIG CLI to develop and publish and maintain, and I'm not sure. Thoughts, Mache, Jingfeng, Jeff?
Let's try it for a while. We don't know where we're going to put these things right now. You'll be probably putting them in your own repos and your own directories if you use them. The plugins, that is.
I probably Customize repo would be a better location for customized plugins being published.
Well, we have some in the Customize repo. There are built-in plugins, right? So functionality that we express as a built-in plugin, as an example, will of course be there, but.
Yeah, we also have some plugins for generate secrets or config maps, but they are only used in testing.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
It would probably be similar to the kubectl plugins. Per se, we don't have a place where we publish the plugins, although at some point in time we will have to. But other than the work that Ahmed is doing around having a central repository for the plugins, we don't have a repo per se where we keep the plugins. We do provide the building blocks for the plugins, but yeah, the plugins itself will vary from provider to provider, from consumer to consumer.
I'd say for Customize specifically, like I think this is the good question, Amache. Like what is our responsibility there? I could see us potentially publishing a plugin, which is like we would like to add this feature to core Customize. However, we are alpha testing it by publishing it as a plugin first and then going to get feedback. Like I could see that sort of publishing of plugins. I don't see us publishing either plugins developed like generally by the community because someone wants a said operation, right? Like that wouldn't be something we're hosting, nor like cloud provider specific plugins. Maybe the sort of other sort of plugin we could provide would be like, if there is an integration with a common ecosystem component that kind of everyone wants, but doesn't really fit within the scope of core Customize or the project, potentially, like, you know, without getting into specific details, can't say like whether we'd support that or not, but I could see like generally common ecosystem support plugins that don't fall in scope to be something we'd publish.
Yeah, totally agree with that one.
You could maybe support a registry that could be the limited list of URLs, I suppose.
You mean from folks published externally?
Yeah, so that you could collect a set of paths for where to look, I guess.
I think curation is probably going to be a challenge there. Maybe one thing we could do is, I think Git repos support tagging. Maybe I can't remember if this is true or not, but I thought Git repos support like tagging with labels. And so I could imagine us publishing a label to say, if you're publishing a plugin, you can tag your repo with this label and then people can search for it. And we're not guaranteeing anything about that plugin. You're just opting into a search index.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question about plugins and the data-driven commands where you can add via CRD a new subcommand?
Yeah. I think we need to come up with another name for those. I was thinking discoverable commands or discovery commands or something like that. But anyway, yeah, go on.
I think they're two fabulous concepts. So congratulations for coming up with whoever came up with them. But from the doc, it wasn't clear if you're moving in a particular direction. It seems with plugins, you're extending via new keywords in the customization schema. And in the data-driven commands, you're extending the CLI using new commands.
Yeah, fantastic point. I think one thing to be, sorry, I'm hearing feedback. Would someone mind muting for a sec? Okay. The discoverable or data-driven commands, I think, facilitate imperative workflows, debugging workflows, or like development workflows, or bootstrapping config workflows, I imagine, and I do not facilitate like delivery workflows and management application workflows. The customized driven transformer generator declarative config workflows or commands are for application management and delivery workflows. And I think they work in very different ways. Like I can imagine the customized workflows to possibly go through a GitOps workflow where humans never run any of those commands directly. There's just a repo that's handed to humans, a Git repo, and they push config into that Git repo, and then some team has set up something that invokes that machinery, right? So I think like, because they're both part of the CLI, right, in terms of like that is the way you interact with them, but or that's the way they run. But in terms of the sort of workflows they support, or the roles or the problems they're trying to solve, I think they're very different, and that's why their architecture is very different. And
Okay.
I'm not sure. I know there can be overlap there. Like, do I create a deployment declaratively, or do I create it imperatively? And I'm not really sure. I don't think we're going to have an opinion in the future that says like, no, you can never create anything imperatively ever, right? I don't see that quite happening, but I do see kind of a, if you're doing production operations, you should probably be checking your config into your repo and actuating from there if you want to leverage the rest of the tooling we're kind of building.
They're both great ways to extend, and as you mentioned, they probably follow a paradigm. And I guess your answer's the best one. Hopefully, it'll make a description on both at some point.
Maybe that's a good topic for the CLI deep dive. I know not everyone can be there, but it will be recorded, and I can make slides, so I can at least kind of publish that information.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And specifically, were you looking like, so was that like kind of a request to say, can you, or rather, can we flesh out the vision for these two things and how we see them evolving?
Well, just how you described one being more of an imperative tool versus, and I was actually building a test framework that sort of rested on test harness. But we're taking parameters. So to do negative tests, to add parameters, I was thinking, which way do I want to extend in order to sort of build this test harness, including negative testing. And then I thought, well, maybe the creators of either mechanism have a thought of how it would apply, and I could see doing it either way, but I didn't get too many hints on this would be a good way to do it under these scenarios. But what you just described actually answers some of my question. So.
Okay, if you want to follow up with kind of more detailed information about what you're trying to do on the mailing list, then I'd be happy to take a closer look.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any more questions with regards to the CLI utils and CLI runtime and CLI experimental before we move to the final topic?
So I have a question about the version skew part. If we put the libraries we developed in CLI experimental to CLI runtime, so how do we make sure those libraries or the binary built from those libraries work for different version of Kubernetes clusters?
We'll have to version them correctly. Currently, CLI runtime is not versioned in any way. I'm guessing that at some point in time, we will have to start strict versioning similar to what kubectl does. I'm guessing that we will just apply similar versioning scheme to the one that we will come up with for kubectl when it gets actually to its own repo. And then we'll just ensure that CLI runtime follows the same versioning as the kubectl, since the kubectl is the first consumer, the main consumer of the CLI runtime. And at the end of the day, that will have to come up, that will have to match some version of cluster, because even though we will move to a separate repo, we need to ensure that kubectl follows the ±1 version skew that we have officially stated in the docs. So it doesn't matter if we will be releasing more often. We'll just have to match the current level of stability. And I'm guessing that the CLI runtime will just follow the same path as the kubectl.
Yeah, Jin-Feng, I think your question was, if we want to support, say, a different version skew semantic than what kubectl supports in CLI, specific CLI runtime subpackages, for instance, the apply code, how do we, one, communicate that and to enforce it? Is that what your question was?
I would more like, so I don't quite understand how current CLI runtime work. Does it support all different versions of Kubernetes APIs? And how do we do the testing if we put the library there?
There's ways to do the testing. We can use the test framework. The test harness framework will allow you to bring up an arbitrary control plane version. So for that, in theory, what we could do is just pass the control plane version in as a flag or environment variable to the test harness, and then run the run the test against like n versions, and then use other flags to filter only based on what like we can annotate what packages support what versions of Kubernetes, and then only run the corresponding tests against those versions.
Okay, thank you.
Will 2.01 then be under V2? So you would import all your customized packages with V2?
By V2?
I think you're talking about the customized to, are we changing the package name to in order to keep version compatibility and that sort of thing?
Yeah, in the GoMod.
I don't think we have changed on those packages, but those will be the last one that we support PKG.
So in 2.1, customized 2.1, yeah, that's the last time. In fact, the PKG directory will probably be deleted, and new packages will be introduced at the top level that will have, sort of formal agreement as to how they'll be supported and they'll be versioned. Right now, there is no formal support. It's completely use at your own risk.
Okay, so you'll have some sort of GoMod VX.
Exactly. Yes.
Afterwards, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll move the business logic into an internal package, and then explicitly opt in what we export.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on in that case to the last topic, and I'm guessing Phil put that on the agenda.
I just threw this on here. I have slides I prepared for the deep dive, but I think this is a talk that's really about what the people attending want to hear, unlike a talk on a specific topic, right? that you'd give like about a particular proposal or something. This is really about the attendees getting access to developers and learning about stuff they want to learn about. So I'm planning on keeping it pretty sparse in terms of slides and just covering very high level stuff, and then being able to dive deep into whatever topics people want to talk about. So if there's anything you'd like to see discussed, again, not everyone can be there, but if you send either to the mailing list or here, say, I really would like to see this topic discussed, I'll make sure that I cover it.
And on that note, I'm going to add that during the SIG CLI intro section, I'm going to cover a code tour for kubectl. I've been asked for this topic several times. Even though we are in the process of moving stuff around, the general idea will be the same. Even though the package will move more or less here and there, the gist should be the same when it comes to working with kubectl. So I'm hoping that this will address the majority of the questions that people are having. I did a short version of the code tour last Wednesday during the Ask Our Contributors. So I haven't seen the recording up yet, but that was only a 10 minutes or so. During the intro, I'll have somewhere like 30 minutes, so a little bit more. I'm hoping to go a little bit more in details, and I'll have some people in the room, so they will be able to ask some more questions as well as I go through the code.
Awesome. That's going to be really great.
Yeah.
You did one already, right, at a meetup or something?
Last week, Ask Our Contributors. Yeah. I haven't had recording. I haven't heard from Paris, but as soon as there will be one, I'll make sure to share it with the entire SIG. Okay, are there any questions? Any of the topics that we mentioned earlier, or kubectl in general?
I can give an update on the docs. I still haven't figured out how to get the stuff out of SurveyMonkey without setting up a bunch of accounts and whatnot. But I'll just summarize that. People have not been filling out the survey. I think out of 100 visitors, or out of like 1,000 visitors a week, we get maybe one person filling out the survey. But the feedback so far has been about 7 out of, or maybe 2 out of 10 people like really love it, and they just can't say enough good things about it. About 5 out of 10, or about 7 out of 10 people are like, thanks, this is an improvement, but like there's too many docs in too many places now, can you go clean that up, or something like this, right? Or can you add a little more detail on the reference doc? And so for that stuff, the ones that I can address, like I added the reference documentation in as a response to that. Cleaning up all the documentation everywhere is a task that's kind of, I have to think about more. And then 1 out of 10 people is like, I don't know what customize is, and why are you telling me to use it? So it follows like like if you look at a good product on Amazon, it's like always 4.5 stars, because there's always like, you know, a couple of people that just hate any product. So I'm not too concerned about the occasional person disagreeing with it, as long as the general trend is people are excited about it.
One thing I think would be very helpful, and I could assign myself this issue, but on all your examples, you know, how you sort of build with EOFs, you know, shell scripts, and at the end you do the customized build, and you say, okay, we're done. Sometimes it would be useful to have the actual output of the customized build embedded in the example, so you can see what Customize actually did, rather than just filtering it through a test, yes or no, you know.
Hi. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And sometimes the output can be long. So in the interest of keeping short examples,
Mm.
we usually omit those things. That particular kind of example is meant for you to actually go ahead and run on your own workstation. So you should have the output in front of you. For what it's
Okay.
worth.
And-
That's the rationale for what it's worth.
I could run them, just about all of them. But when you go back and visit the examples, you don't always remember where you output that stuff.
Yeah, it's always a tension between brevity and utter completeness.
Yep. Oh, yeah, you could have links of where.
The docs I was referring to are actually
He's referring to the
referring
examples
to
on the customized website.
control docs. I just pasted in the link.
No, he's
Yeah,
referring
and
to
as
the examples.
the examples in the control docs do have what you've described. Just if you haven't seen those yet.
Oh, I haven't. I was referring to the examples under customized.
Cool. I just pasted in a link.
Oh,
The
okay.
notes. Go check it out and then take a look at those examples and see if it's more along with the lines of what you are referring to.
Okay. If it is, I'd be happy to pick that up.
Yeah. Fill out the survey.
Okay.
Okay, so actually Raul Garcia pasted the link to the recording of the last week's Ask Our Contributors. I just pasted the link in the agenda, but I'm going to paste it into the chat. This is where the actual code tour starts. But if you want to listen about other stuff that I'm talking, feel free to listen to the remaining part of the meeting. It was myself and David. We were guests of that meeting, David Eads. Does anyone else have any stand-ups? That's how I treated Phil's update on the doc survey and my code tour information. I'm guessing Sean had to leave earlier, and so we don't have update on the split, but I know he has a bunch of PRs out there, so just go grab for his name as the author and you'll be able to see the progress. There's a lot of moving parts still. We have about 3 weeks before the code freeze, which is on, if I remember correctly, May 30th. But I'm gonna quickly look at my notes.
In about 1.5 weeks before KubeCon.
No, code freeze for 1.15 is May 30th. So that's like a week after KubeCon. It's Thursday. Yeah. That's what my notes says, at least. Okay, I guess we can wrap it up for today. Thank you very much all for attending. It was very nice talking to you, and it was very fruitful discussion. So for those of you that will be attending KubeCon in Barcelona, see you in 2 weeks in person. And with the rest, we will see in 4 weeks. Bye, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maciej.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.